Hi guys, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube. Resident underslash of underslash Collinwood for BitChute. And I'm here to continue my read along for John Philip Betancourt's continuing blog series, The Return of Dark Shadows. For those that have been following along, I've been doing a revisited tour, right? Yes. This, however, is the new chapter in the new series, The Onyx Curse. It dropped, let's see, 3 days early. So it's March 6, 2020. Series 12, Chapter 1, A New Curse. I like how he has this picture up here, Victoria and India side by side. A single moment in our lives can shape our futures forever. It can be a moment filled with family and friends and all the excitement and joy we can imagine. Or it can be dark and twisted, casting shadows on our whole existence for all time. This looming shadow, like a curse, can burden us and future generations for as long as the moon reflects the light of the sun in the blackest sky. India de Archo has seen happiness in her life. She has seen joy. She has seen the world of love and acceptance. That is, up until the moment right after she met her parental family. Her bloodline belongs to a cursed family from Collinsport, Maine. This reunion with her father's family, betrayed what she believed was reality and ushered in horrors only a twisted imagination could create. In an instant, an onyx ring belonging to the vampire Barnabas Collins shifted India's world, real and tangible, into a world of confusion, fear, darkness, and the macabre. This black stone ring took India back in time to the year 1966, to the very moment Victorian Winters arrived at Collinwood. This twisting of time has a purpose, but the answers you see are yet to be revealed. This is an alternate beginning to long told over time, and builds on the mystery that is the Collins family's legacy of secrets that they thought long buried beyond the wall of stone. This is India's journey into the world of the past, into the world created by a lie revived by the Onyx Curse. Collinsport, Maine, 1966. All India could see was the darkness of the night and trees passing her as she ran down the sloped hill that made up the western edge of the Collinwood compound on Widow's Hill. She ran so fast the night air stunned the skin on her face like an icy winter's kiss. She ran and she ran, never looking back at Collinwood, where she had seen a young Victoria Winters enter the mansion. It was real. This was real. The black onyx ring that mysteriously appeared around her neck in 2019 had created a time swap, and she was really, truly back in 1966. As India's mind grappled with with what was really happening, she continued to run toward the village. She didn't even realize she had arrived at the edge of town when she was suddenly stopped in the middle of the rural road that led up to Collinwood by a speeding car that came to a screeching halt, almost hitting her. The person driving punched the brakes inches from hitting India. As she turned her face away from the bright headlights that pierced through the dark, foggy night. "Hey, lady, are you crazy? Get out of the street!" the man barked to India as he jumped out of the driver's side and stood in the street. India stood under the street lamp that brightly hovered over her like a tiny sun in a cloudy sky. India didn't move. She just turned back and looked at the car, large and bulky, as they were in 1966. She couldn't believe it was real. She had never seen anything like it except in the movies. The man shook his head, trembling too with the shock of almost hitting her. He was tall, handsome, and with golden brown hair and a short beard. His clothes were like a costume from a 1960s party. India remained frozen in front of his car. "Are you okay? I don't think I hit you," the man said, coming close to India. She said, unsure how to reply and looking down at her body. "Hey, miss, are you okay?" the tall, handsome man said, touching her shoulder. "You're not okay. I guess having a car almost plow you down in the middle of the night could be scary. Can I give you a lift somewhere?" he asked. Um, um, India was dumbstruck. The shock of where she was and how it happened was still setting in. She grabbed the necklace and placed it under her shirt, hiding Barnabas's ring that hung on its long silver chain. Okay, the, the man said, his face showing concern for India's well-being, and that she couldn't even speak. He grabbed her by the shoulders and led her to his car. He opened the door and sat her down on the cold leather seats. As he swung back around into the driver's seat, India was still speechless. She could smell the leather of the seats. Another sign that this was really happening to her and it was not a dream. As the man began driving away from the edge of the Collins property and deeper into town, the streetlights suddenly blacked out, leaving the road outside of the Collins estate in a black, gazy fog. The man could see India was in a very bad place, her eyes, like saucers, constantly taking in the 1966 version of Collinsport that was beyond her imagination. He was growing further concerned. He didn't hit her, but the shock of almost hitting her seemed to be just as bad. "Excuse me. You jumped out into the street from that big patch of land," the man said, trying to make conversation. "Anyone could have hit you," he added as she looked over at him, still speechless. "I'm sorry," she suddenly said in a quiet voice. "Oh, no, no. Please don't be sorry," the man said as he slowly made his way through town. "I guess I should have been more careful, too. That part of town could be a bit dark at night. The street lights usually don't work up there. Surprised they were tonight, but luckily for you, they were right," he answered shyly. "Excuse me, where are we going?" India asked, finally realizing she was in a stranger's car and minutes into town. "I'm guessing you could use a cup of coffee to warm you up. You weren't really giving me much to go on, so I'm going to pull into the cafe here at the inn. My friend Maggie owes me a cup of coffee," so he said as he slowly pulled into the Collinsport Inn parking lot. Maggie. India said she remembered that name. Yes, she's the waitress. Do you know her?" the man said. "I don't," India replied quickly, as she wasn't sure how to answer. She was afraid to say yes. Maggie certainly wouldn't remember her. "No," India replied again. They pulled into a small parking lot outside a building painted in white whitewash, an early 1800s farmhouse style building with an American flag hanging in the fog above a wraparound porch. It was the inn in its 1966 form, before its various renovations over the years that would come. The man stood outside of his car and bent down, looked back in through the driver's seat window that was open. The red and blue lights from the inn's cafe sign flashed on India's face, perfect skin. Flashed on her perfect skin. He looked at her and waited for her to open her own door, but she just started at to open her door. She just stared at the inn from the other side of the windshield. The hotel was so different than it was in 2019 version. It was smaller, more quaint. The whole look was astonishingly different. "Miss?" the man asked, wondering why she hadn't come out. "Oh," India said, realizing how bizarre she must be coming off whatever was happening to her was real. She could feel it. This was no dream, and she knew that she had to snap out of the shock. She just wanted to figure everything out and get back to her real life, her real time inside of her mind. India knew she had to quickly get used to where she was to find the answers to whatever made this happen to her. The two slowly made their way into the inn's cafe. It was quiet. Only 3 people sat on red and their gingham covered tables, sipping on coffee and eating small little sandwiches. A short haired waitress with a paper hat and pink uniform poked her head from around the swinging kitchen door. It was a young, vibrant Maggie Evans. "Hey, Justin, come on and sit wherever. I'll be with you in a sec," she said, then snapped her head in a double take when she noticed he was with a beautiful new face. India de Archo, the man who India just now discovered was named Justin, led her to a side booth right next to a window facing the street covered by a short curtain and the same gingham patron as the tablecloth. Maggie lifted an eyebrow and sauntered over to Justin and India's table, tapping a pencil on her order pad. "So what can I get you to?" Maggie said with a smirk. "You owe me a coffee," said Justin, smiling. "I do." "Since when do I owe you anything, Justin?" Maggie said sarcastically. "You do," Justin replied with an equally bright smile. "Fine, and you, miss?" Maggie said, turning to India. "She could have the coffee. I just came along for the ride," just replied. "How valiant of you," Maggie replied in one more of her trademark sarcasms. As Maggie made her way for the coffee, India leaned in and asked Justin for directions to the cafe's ladies' room. Justin pointed to the corner, and India rushed off. "So who is she?" Maggie said, returning to pouring 2 mugs of coffee. "I don't know. I was driving home through a shortcut up by Widow's Hill, and she literally bounced out of the bushes, and I almost hit her. She hasn't even told me her name. I felt bad. I must have freaked her out. She didn't talk to me almost the whole way here," Justin explained. "Widow's Hill, huh? By the Collins place? So odd. That's twice tonight," Maggie said. "What's twice tonight?" Justin wondered. "About an hour before you came in just now, 2 other people new to town came in. One was a lady going up to Collinwood. She needed a cab, and I think I've heard the name Collins more in one night than I have in a whole month. And that's enough, Maggie said as she shook off a shiver that ran through her whole body at the mention of the Collins name. Really? Do you think she has something to do with those other new people? You know, they're always switching up the employees up there, especially when, they go missing, Justin said with wide eyes. In the ladies' room, India just stared at herself in the mirror. She shook her head and turned on the faucet, letting the cold water pool in her hands and then splashing it on her face, forcing her to realize again that this was no dream. She was really where she was, an old bathroom at the old cafe of the old Collins Port Inn in 1966. She dried her hands and face just as an older woman came out of the stall. You all right, dearie? You seem upset. I saw you come out with that Justin Patterson boy. Careful with that one, the lady said, washing her hands. Why should I be careful? India asked softly as she looked at the woman from the reflection of the mirror. Oh, honey, he's a known heartbreaker. He may be the sheriff's son, but the good and honorable Gene didn't make it into that apple. Believe you me, many a young lady in this town have had a deal with his shenanigans, and you'll just be one for the record books. If I were you, I'd get my things and call a cab. Let him keep his coffee, the old lady said as she walked out of the bathroom, leaving India to stew in her warning. It was all too much. India pulled out the necklace from around her neck and held Barnabas's ring in her hand. She could feel it warm, the flesh on her fingers. What the hell do you want from me? She whispered to herself. India closed her eyes and took a deep breath and replaced the necklace, placed it back in her shirt, and reached for the bathroom door. As India made her way back into her seat with Justin, Maggie smiled at her and watched with an eagle eye as she sat back down carefully, creating an opening for a second new female face to town, right down to her movements and body language. So, how's the coffee? Maggie said as India reached for the mug to taste it. India smiled and motioned it was good. Good. Great. So Justin and I were chatting while you were away, and he told me where he found you, Maggie. Justin said, surprised by Maggie's forceful prodding. Were you coming from Collinwood? How do you know the Collins family? Maggie continued, prodding despite her early discomfort discussing the family. The old woman overheard this, and her eyes bugged out of her head. She quickly left her money on the table and grabbed her husband's arm. She's a Collins, the old woman whispered to her husband, who was confused by the whole situation and still wanting to finish his coffee and donut. India knew she had to make some allies if she was ever going to make it home. She couldn't risk alienating anyone so soon. I was up there because, well, funny thing is, I was hired as a governess, and turns out they were double booked. Someone else had the job before me, so I guess I missed out, India said, lying. You'd think so, Maggie said sarcastically, hinting that perhaps India dodged a bullet, missing out on the job. Sorry, India replied. Oh, nothing. So where's your stuff? Maggie asked. My stuff? Oh, well, that's what I forgot. I must have left it up at the house, India continued to lie. You'd think they would have been the first thing you'd reach for when you realized that you had to leave. Huh, your things. Maggie said as Justin jumped in. Don't listen to Maggie. She has all these crazy ideas about the Collins family. Crazy? Maggie objected to Justin, quickly changing the subject. What's your name? Justin asked. India de Archo. Pretty, Maggie replied. And you were hired as a governess, but someone else had the job first, Justin asked again. That's right, India replied, reaffirming her lie that Maggie and Justin both didn't believe, but were going with it. Well, it looks like it's going to be a long night for you, hun. So why don't I grab you a slice of pie, okay? Maggie said, irritated with India's sudden lack of transparency. You'll have to excuse Mags. There's a lot about this town that kind of, well, anyway, I guess we're just confused, India. Even if the Collins family accidentally hired two nannies, why wouldn't they let you stay at the house until the morning so you could get back into town in the daytime? To set you off in the dark down the hill was just, with all the crazy, Justin paused. Again, animals, that room around there, it's just really hard to believe. Do you know anyone else in town? Maybe I could take you to their house. Maybe you can get a room there. Suddenly it dawned on India, as she remembered Julia Hoffman's final words to her just before the time switch. She remembered Julia saying to her, "Come find me." She could hear her voice so clearly. It was like a bell ringing in her mind. Julia would not only believe her, but help her find her way back and find a way out of this bizarre nightmare. Julia would be the only person alive in this time that could crack this mystery and help her figure out why she was where she was and why she was chosen by Barnabas in the first place. Actually, yes, I do know someone. Is there any way you might know a woman named Dr. Julia Hoffman? She'll help me, India said just as Maggie returned with a pie. No doctor here by that name, Maggie said, returning with the pie. Don't you have a phone book? Justin replied to Maggie, who rolled her eyes, not trusting the second new woman in town one bit. As Maggie reached under the large breakfast counter, Justin looked deep into India's hazel eyes. He could sense fear, uncertainty, and confusion in her stare. She was lost. He could tell, but she had no idea how lost she really was. Then a loud bang of the phone book slamming on the table broke his gaze on India. Irritated, Justin thanked Maggie, who walked off to clean the other tables. Okay, let's see. Hoffman, H. Henderson, Hendricks, Hollister, Horner, no Hoffman. This is Collins Support Index, so let me check Banger's side. Justin explained. The phone book has both, India asked. Are you kidding? We're a tiny area. This phone book has 4 cities in it. Bangor is the biggest. If your friend is anywhere, she's in Bangor. Let's see. Harmer again. Henderson, another Henderson, a third Henderson. Hoffman, there. Hoffman J. This has to be her. There's only one. 14892 Sains Road in Bangor, Justin said. Can you take me there, please? She's really the only person that can help me. I think can help me, sir. India said. Yeah, sure. Right now? Justin wondered, looking at the clock. Yes, please, I have to see her, India said, rushing out of the booth and over to the cafe door. Justin jumped to and followed India. Thanks, Maggie, Justin shouted. That was 2 coffees now. You owe me one, she shouted back with a grin. Next time, Justin smiled. Indy and Justin got into his car and took off for the short ride to Bangor. Maggie paused and she cleaned up Justin and Indy's table just as a dark-haired, handsome man walked into the hotel lobby. That was just adjacent Sains Road. She wondered to herself, that's where Wincliffe is, Maggie said, recognizing the street where her mother spent her last years. Maggie and Justin's family knew Wincliffe very well. What are you muffling to yourself? The dark-haired man said, smirking to Maggie, whom he'd had a conversation with earlier in the evening when he too arrived in Collinsford via the train. Oh, Burke, don't mind me. Ready for the nightcap? Maggie asked, shaking off her thoughts and identifying the man as Burke Devlin, a former resident of the town who just returned. Sure, thanks, Mags. Where was the Patterson kid running off to? Burke asked, sipping from the cocktail Maggie had just poured. You don't want to know, Maggie said, grinning. So what's on your agenda? I know you got back for a reason or two, she added. Burke smiled. He was back for the long haul. Something in him, tendency, strength, whatever it was, made sure that his return would be remembered for all time. You'll see, Burke said, grinning. At Collinwood, the dim lights of the main drawing room reflected beautiful alabaster skin of the lady of the house. She sat in a black velvet dress, dripping in pearls and diamonds from her ear and sternum, as she flipped through a book and warming her skin by the fire from the great hearth in the center of the room. A large portrait of her great-great-grandfather hung above her, stared down at her like a guardian angel, protecting her from all that would ill her. Really, Liz, do you actually think David is going to get used to governess after governess? This is the fourth this year, a male voice said from behind the woman. It was Roger Collins entering from the foyer with a hassock glass of sherry and a dark plum-colored smoking jacket. Roger, please, the lady said, rolling her eyes. I don't want to get into this with you again. Victoria comes highly recommended, and I believe David needs someone in his life that isn't constantly undermining his own creativity like you do. Besides, you're too busy with work, and I don't usually have the energy or the time to rush around with a 10-year-old boy. Roger's sister, Elizabeth's daughter, replied, never once lifting her eyes from her book. But from a foundling home? Was there no agency that could... Roger began before Elizabeth interrupted. Enough. Victoria Winters is my employee. I am paying for her services, not you. You don't have to worry about anything but yourself. As per usual, Elizabeth shot back, shutting her younger brother up as he filled his sherry glass at the wet bar. You know, some of this anxiety would really pass if you got out of this house more often. I think you've mourned enough, Roger replied in a huff, referring to the fact that his sister hadn't left their mansion since the disappearance of her husband, Paul, over 20 years ago. Elizabeth lifted an eyebrow. The dim lights of the lamps on the two corners with the wood-paneled room shined an orange glow on her disapproving reaction. I would watch your mouth if I were you, she warned. Roger sighed and decided to take a break from ripping at his older sister, who he knew would match him wit for wit, and changed the subject quickly back to Victoria Winters. Where is she now, anyway? He asked, feeling reprimanded. Upstairs, getting settled in her room. I want you to treat her with respect and kindness. Do you understand me? She's come a very long way and perhaps has had to suffer unimaginable grief in her life. You don't end up growing up in a foundling home in New York City and not have a rough life. Is that understood? I'm having the same conversation with Carolyn as soon as she gets in, Elizabeth further warned. Roger nodded. Where is Kitten anyway? Roger asked of his 21-year-old niece. Elizabeth sighed with a lifted brow again, flicked the page of her book, and muttered in her mid-Atlantic accent, out. The docks on the Collinsport harbor were dark and foggy as the buoys dingled in the distant quiet waves of the black water, and a beautiful blonde woman stood at the end of the dock under a fogged out pure light. She had been out with a friend at the Blue Whale Tavern, but things didn't go her way that night as a bizarre fight occurred, but it didn't matter. She had other plans. The beautiful blonde stood with her legs exposed from under a black trench coat and watched as a black car suddenly rolled up next to her for her second date, so to speak, of that night. The tinted black window rolled down, and the blonde-haired woman, Elizabeth's daughter Carolyn Stoddard, looked in. You came, she said to the other person in the car. I was afraid you would never make it. The person in the car reached over, revealing a hand in a black leather glove, and unlocked the manual car door, allowing Carolyn to pull the door open and step into the dark car. Thank you. I really needed your help with you here. I can finally get the answers I've been looking for. I'm tired of lies, Carolyn said. You don't have to worry now. I'm here. I'll fix it all, the voice said from the shadowy backseat driver. Take us to Collinwood, please, the person added to the driver in the front seat, who tipped his black hat in the rearview mirror and slowly drove off, leaving the docks desolate and dark again. As Justin drove quickly into the seaside highway on their way to find Julia Hoffman in Bangor, India looked out of the car window and saw the twinkling lights of the town of Collinsport below. The town looked so quaint and quiet, revealing none of the twisted things that lie just below the surface of the fog. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, signaling to Justin she was worried about something. You're very quiet. You're a very quiet person, she said, joking. I must have so much on my mind, she replied. That's a really interesting ring you have on your necklace, Justin said, to India's surprise. What do you know about it? India replied, shocked. What? Nothing. I just saw it around your neck when I almost hit you earlier tonight. Whose was it? Justin asked, confused by India's sudden panic. How do you know it belonged to somebody? India replied suspiciously, thinking everything that was happening had a meaning. Look, I'm not going to pry, okay? Justin said with a laugh. It's just obviously not yours. I mean, if it were yours, you'd be wearing it on your finger, but it's on a necklace. That's all, he finished. You're right, I'm sorry. I just had a really long night. I want to get to Bangor to get to Dr. Hoffman to get this over with. I just wish I could explain more, but even if I tried to tell you what was really going on, you'd never believe me, India said. Bangor is about a 40-minute drive. We have the time, Justin said, flashing his bright smile. India looked at him her perch on the passenger seat. He was all smiles. He was clearly smitten with her. She thought it for a split second and blurted out, "The ring belongs to a vampire who transported me from the year 2019 to the year 1966. I don't know why Dr. Hoffman is his future wife, and she can help me figure out how to get back to my own time." Justin's face suddenly changed. His eyes glazed over, then suddenly he burst out into a fit of laughter and he laughed so hard tears began to peek through his eyes. India expected that reaction. Okay, okay, I get it. The ring is your ex's or something. That's fine. I mean, we just met. I wouldn't expect you to tell me everything, right? Away, he finally said as his laughter at India's true story finally subsided. As Justin's car carved its way through the winding seaside highway on his way to Bangor, the light of the Collinsport Lighthouse spun around as a constant guide for the sailors out to sea. The lighthouse, India remembered, was the burning force that the rain used as a conductor to bring her from 2019 to 1966. She continued to stare at its spinning white light around and around, flash, 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 flash. Every 20 seconds, the light of the lighthouse down below would spin back and hit India in her face. The rain around her neck began to warm. It was so warm it began to burn her skin on her neck. India wrenched with pain and pulled the rain from out her shirt and grabbed it. Suddenly, India's eyes rolled to the back of her head as she passed out. "India! Hey, India! Oh my God, are you okay?" Justin screamed as he saw India's head bobbing in the passenger seat. When Justin looked up, he was in the wrong lane of the road. Just as the truck, coming in the opposite direction, turned the corner, the truck honked its deep, long horn like a ship signaling its arrival at port and swerved. Justin quickly pulled the wheel to the side, his car carrying over into the side of the hill, crushing the front of it and pushing his face into the steering wheel, knocking him unconscious. "Father, father, come quick," David's voice said, screaming from the top of the stairs at Colin. Roger and Elizabeth rushed to the foyer and saw David crouched down next to Victoria Winters, who had fainted just as the pair were coming down the steps. "Oh my God," Elizabeth shouted as she covered her mouth and shook. "What happened?" Roger questioned his son as he leaped up the stairs and lifted Victoria's head into his lap, carefully slapping her on the cheek to wake her. "We were just coming down here to be with you and Aunt Elizabeth, and suddenly she fainted. I don't know what happened." "Is she dead? Is she dead?" David said, screaming. "David, come here," Elizabeth ordered as David quickly rushed down the steps to Elizabeth's side. Justin woke up to the driver of the truck he almost hit, slapping him on the face. "Hey, you okay? Are you okay?" the man said. Justin slowly woke up to the smoke and fumes coming from his crushed car. Justin said, rubbing his head. "Fine, India," Justin said, looking over the empty passenger seat. "Where's India?" he added. "Who?" the truck driver asked. "My friend, she was right here." "India," Justin said, rubbing his forehead bleeding from the blow to the steering wheel. "There was no one else in the car with you, just you," the truck driver said to a stunned Justin as he was helped out of the car. "What?" Justin replied in total confusion. She was right there next to me," Justin said, getting out of his car and now standing on the foggy highway just above Collinsport in the swinging light of the lighthouse off to the side. "Miss Winters! Miss Winters! Are you okay?" Elizabeth's voice said as Vicky slowly opened her eyes, finding herself now lying on the sofa in a drawer. "Are you okay, Vicky?" David asked as Vicky looked at him strangely. "I'm so sorry. I was rude to you upstairs. I won't go through your things ever again," David said, revealing his bad behavior to the rest of the family. "What?" Elizabeth asked. "David, what did you do?" Elizabeth screeched as David hid behind the sofa. "Miss Winters, you fainted. Miss Winters," Roger said, trying to pull focus back to getting Vicky well. "Please try and drink some water," he added. Vicky blinked her eyes as she were trying to reset where she was seeing and what she was seeing in front of her. Foreign faces staring down at her, a strange feeling to overcome the new governess. She looked at them. She knew who they were by name, but had no idea how she got there. How was it even happening? One minute she was somewhere else. The next she was on the sofa in the living room at Collinwood. Vicky was terrified, trembling. Something wasn't right inside of her. Something wasn't right at all. "Vicky," the new governess whispered. That name did not compute in her mind. She didn't feel herself, not one bit. "Roger, why don't you help Vicky to her room? She needs to rest." Sorry, as soon as I'm sure as soon as she does, she'll be all right. Right as rain, Elizabeth said, holding back David, who was out of sorts after watching Vicky faint, blaming himself for his bad behavior. When Vicky apparently caught him going through her things, Roger nodded his head in agreement. "Come along, Miss Winters," Roger said, helping Vicky up from the sofa. "Miss Winters," the weak woman said again, still in dazed and confused state. Roger looked at her funny. "She's disoriented," he said to Elizabeth, who nodded. As Vicky and Roger made their way slowly over to the main staircase and into the long, dim hall, carpeted from wall to wall in blood-red rugs, they passed a glass-encased portrait of Naomi Collins. Suddenly Vicky saw her reflection, but it wasn't the face she was expecting. Moments before, she was in a different place. She was at the top of the stairs. She wasn't even in the Collins mansion at all. She was in a car driving in the highway with Justin Patterson. She was India at the art show. The woman looking at the reflection of Victoria Winters wasn't Victoria Winters at all, but India, the art show, magically trapped inside of Vicky's body by the power of Barnabas Collins' onyx ring that now hung around her neck under Victoria's soft white blouse. The sleeping vampire, hidden away from all, had done this merging of the two women as part of a plan of his that would change the family forever. But why? What was Barnabas's plan for India now that she was trapped inside of Vicky? Why was Barnabas so keen on keeping India in 1966 that he combined the two women together? India gasped at the new face looking back at her in the glass of Naomi's frame. These two women, important women in the story of the Collins family, were now sharing one role, one body, one curse. She had no idea why. "Miss Winters," Roger asked India. Now Vicky couldn't believe what was happening to her. Her mind was a mixture of terror and nerves. She didn't understand anything that was happening to her, but her inside, all she could do was think that Julia could help her, save her, and take her home to 2019. "Miss Winters, are you okay? You may have knocked your head when you fainted," Roger repeated, trying to form an explanation for himself for Victoria's strange behavior. The reality that was happening was almost unbelievable, and she knew she couldn't right out explain it. India knew she had to play along with what was happening. No one in their right mind, she thought, would believe her explaining of inhabiting Vicky's body by magic. She would sound insane. She would sound mad. India took a deep breath and closed her eyes for a second time. For a second, made that the conclusion she had to act as Vicky until it was safe, until she knew what was really going on. India in Vicky's body then smirked at the waiting Roger, who extended his hand to help her up the rest of the stairs, but her emotions got the best of her. India began to cry. She was so lost, so very lost. "Oh no, don't do that. You'll be fine. Come on. You need to rest a little. People faint all the time," Roger said, warming up to the new woman in the house. He was oblivious. He saw one woman in bodily form, but another lurked just behind her eyes and mind in a state of confusion and fright. Was just a bad dream? Was she really in 1966 and inside of a different woman's living though that woman's life, called by that woman's name? How would this end? How would she get out of this? India was overwhelmed. Inside the mind India now shared with Vicky, all India could do was panic and wonder what in the world Barnabas had planned for her, and just how or if she would ever get out of the nightmare. "Come along, Miss Winters," Roger said, once more extending his hand to her. India dried her eyes and took another deep breath. She was now Victoria Winters, but for how long? Alright, guys, that's my read along review. Well, that's my read along. Here's my review. I think there's a lot to take in. Number one, what India is focused on why exactly Barnabas is doing to her. She knows that Barnabas is a vampire. But here's the thing, she's back in 1966, and the thing she's been told by the Collins family of 2019 isn't exactly the most upfront thing, and she does not know that. And that's a whole nother danger she's in. Not just the danger of being someone she isn't, being Victoria Winters, but assuming things she was told was correct. Because remember, Julia Hoffman in the previous series, at the end of the previous series, told her, "Come find me." And the reason she told her that is because Julia, when she got to Collinwood originally, she was researching the Collins family history, and they just played it off that she's always been doing that. But we all know that's bullshit. She hasn't always been doing that. She is a doctor Julia Hoffman. That's true, but she hasn't always been at Collinwood. Um, she arrives right at the moment Victoria Winters arrives, and India has not only spoken to the sheriff's son and rode with the sheriff's son, but she has spoken with Maggie Evans, who has spoken with Burke Devlin. Collinsport is a very, very small town, and things are going to get around. But another woman was posing as the governess. Trust me, that will happen. I'm making that prediction right now. I could be wrong, but I'm making predictions. It's all good. This is my reader's opinion. I want to stress this. I could be wrong. Um, do I think India is in danger? She's in a lot of danger because again, she's she's not just in Victoria's body now. Look at the changes that happened prior to the exchange of the body. First she was sent back through time by the Onyx Ring. She was almost run over. Then she meets Justin Patterson, who's Sheriff Patterson's son. she meets Maggie Evans. This woman, you know, lied to protect herself, and rightfully so. And Maggie and Justin didn't believe her, but Justin didn't exactly believe her when she did tell him the truth about the, you know, the whole vampire thing. And why would they? No one knows about Barnabas being a vampire in 1966. And I'm really curious of how well she's gonna hide that ring, wearing it now as Victoria Winters. I'm assuming you don't want to lose that ring because that could be your ticket back. That's just an assumption by me. um, I do think that she is she's lost. I think that's so well said because she is. She just seems so lost. She doesn't know what he wants out of her or from her. And again, to me, her assuming that Barnabas is doing this is one assumption I would not make because there are other elements in play. Yes, it's Barnabas's ring, but think about who Barnabas has had contact with that ring, not just himself, but Angelique. I will not discount Angelique out of this. Not saying she'll be in this, but that's just my stance on it. Um, I would definitely keep a close eye on Justin Patterson. I think he's going to be a huge X factor in this, along with that man in the black car with the black glove. Is that Burke Devlin picking up Carolyn? You would think so, but I don't think it is. No, I think Burke Devlin was talking to Maggie. I mean, it could be he could have just left and picked her up. I could be wrong. We'll find out soon how right or wrong I am. Um, really, really good. Really, really deep. Just by day one, you know, this was. You have a lot of questions going into this, and really the confusion of India. There are questions because there are already things that have changed because of India's time travel, and look at the things that have changed. 1966 has already changed just by India going back. We didn't meet a Justin Patterson originally in 1966. Now we've met a Justin Patterson, and that's not to say that Sheriff Patterson didn't have a son. He certainly could have. And it's not to say that Carolyn didn't go home right away. Well, actually, remember, Joe Haskell took her home right away because Bert told her to get home and come back. But that changed, and you gotta wonder, is India's time travel a part of that change? Um, and I gotta believe so. I gotta believe India's going back has now already changed things because going through time is like sending a stone. It's like skipping a stone across water. It causes a ripple, and where there's one ripple, or it causes ripples, and where there's one ripple effect, there's many others to come. So, and that's what I take away from just day one. And we'll see where day two, we'll see what the next week brings us. I'm really, really excited about this, that this is back. I'm glad John dropped this early. This is really good so far. I'm enjoying the hell out of it. I love Dark Shadows. Um, love the scene setting. The scene setting has always been so good for this blog. John has done a good job on that. I like how he took you right back to 1966. This is not John's first time traveling, sending you through time, but back to 1966. Holy shit, the description of the car and how things are in 1966 is really good. Um, I fear for India 1000%. You know, we did not know a ton about India, only that she's related to Gabriel. She's Gabriel's sister. She's David's daughter. And here's the thing, she's going to see her dad as a little boy. That's amazing to me. So, and that's going to be an interesting dynamic too. How is she going to react with her father, who is now a boy? You know, that's so interesting. Um, At least it is to me. So I hope you guys enjoy this. I know this is going long because it's over 50 minutes, but I really, I'm doing these read along reviews, and I want to do them right. I don't want to do them wrong. And obviously, when I give my reviews, those are my opinions. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Link will be in the description box on YouTube, on BitChute. Like, share, comment, and subscribe.